Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate our list of panelists. Appreciate you being here, and very grateful that you've to your families for lending you to this process. And I do want to tell the chairman how pleased I am that we have such a high qualified group of panelists with us today. There was no state that got hit harder, and I've said that numerous times here on this committee, hit harder during the economic meltdown than the state of Nevada, both in housing and in banking. We had at one point 60% of all the homes in Nevada underwater, and we lost half of our community banks in our state. Fortunately, that has bounced back. Our underwater is 10–15%, and yet we still don't see a growth of community banks in our state. There's been a massive consolidation of banking in the state, and it has led and coincide to the fact that Nevada is probably one of the most underbanked or unbanked states in the country. And that brings me to you, Ms. McWilliams, and we talked about this in our offices about ILCs. ILCs have played, the industrial loan companies have played an important role in the state of Nevada. And I think there's been a real lack of leadership under the FDIC, under previous leadership, and hoping that under your watch that will change. Give me your thoughts on ILCs and the expansion of them.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. If I can first tell you that I used to live in Stockton, California, which during the foreclosure crisis, when 1 in 33 homes were foreclosed in the United States, had about 1 in 11. So I fully understand the impact of the crisis and the foreclosures in the state of Nevada. With respect to the ILCs, the law of the land is that the ILCs exist. It's a statutory mandate, and the job of the FDIC is to give each ILC application due consideration and, if appropriate, proceed with the approval. I don't know how much work has been done on the ILCs in the last few years. I assume not a lot because I've not seen any new charters. I have a list of the ILC chartered institutions, and if confirmed, I'm happy to work with your office to understand where the holdup has been in the approval process.
I appreciate that. Do you share the same viewpoint of former chairman of the FDIC that ILCs pose no greater safety or soundness risks than any other charter type?
I do.
Okay. And will you encourage new applications for ILC charter?
I will certainly make sure that the FDIC moves swiftly in due consideration. And if that encourages more applicants to send the applications in, then I guess my answer is yes.
If an ILC meets FDIC standards, will you support the approval of that ILC charter?
If it means the ILC standards as currently set up by the FDIC, I believe there should be no obstacles in the application approval.
Okay. Thank you. Moving to community banks, you talked about regulations. Senator Toomey proposed to you what you would do to make necessary changes to allow and to help support and encouraging the chartering of these community banks. And you also talked a little bit about Basel requirements. What would you do to stop the consolidations that has been occurring amongst these small and mid-sized banks?
Senator, I'm actually quite concerned about the consolidation, especially in rural counties. Currently, out of 1,048 rural counties in the United States, 625 do not have a locally chartered community bank. And I believe that the number is 35 counties do not have a single banking presence, which is quite concerning because you have small businesses and consumers who have to drive 20, 30, 40 miles to the nearby county to get small dollar bills and other banking services. So it's something I would like to take a look at. In terms of what specifically I would do, I would like to take a look at how the FDIC has structured the regulatory framework around capital and liquidity requirements for small banks. Some of the requirements, I believe, are not applicable, and I would like to revisit them within the statutory mandates currently set up. One example I can give you is the VOCA rule. Community banks do not do proprietary trading. Nonetheless, they have to do compliance, which I can tell you for a bank of the size of my current employer is quite comprehensive. I can only imagine for a bank that has $500 million in assets and 2 or 3 people in the compliance department, it's probably nearly impossible to do an appropriate amount of work to respond to the regulatory burden. So that's something I would like to focus on.
Ms. McWilliams, thank you. And to our panelists again, sorry I didn't get to ask questions, but I want to thank you again for being here and for showing your support. Mr. Chairman, thank you. My time's run out.
Senator Warren.